All right, you two head inside.
Yep. Yeah.
Verv, what are you doing?
I'm watching after the path that this dwarf took.
All right, he doesn't seem to be in any great hurry. But when he finally does make his turn, he seems to be vaguely heading back towards the academy/temple district.
Okay, I will follow.
All right, are you trying to stealthily follow, or are you just
No,
going after him?
going after him.
Okay. And lastly, are you trying to catch up with him, or do you just want to follow him until you arrive at where he's going?
I want him to know that I'm behind him, up until the point that he gets to his place. And if he turns around, I'll just stay put and just keep watching him.
Uh, you feel fairly confident that even if he doesn't acknowledge your presence, he probably knows you're there. Just based on the fact that this guy seems to have a very interesting connection with the winds of magic, but he never stops or slows down or speeds up or seems to acknowledge it in any way, until he finally he does arrive at the academy, which seems to have emptied out for the evening. And as he opens the front door, he turns and looks back. He looks back at you with the door held open, and he seems to wait expectantly.
I will wander up.
He gestures for you to come inside, and then he closes the door behind you, and he walks until he gets to basically center of the room and turns around and says, "All right, we could do this now then."
Yes, please.
He nods and says, "How long have you been in Jettenberg?"
What's today? Second day? Or first day?
You're going into your second day.
So not even a day.
He nods and says, "And where did you come from?"
Hagerdorf?
He nods again
And then before that, many other places.
He nods and says, "And how long have you been in Hagerdorf then?"
This is like a week, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll say a week.
He nods again, and he pauses for a time, a very long time.
I'll find a seat and kind of put one leg over the other and just wait.
All right. He watches you for like minutes. Just seem to keep going by, and he just watches you for a really long time without saying anything. And he finally grumbles something in a language that to you just sounds like stones grating against one another, before he turns to you and he says, "I don't trust Elgi, particularly Wutelgi. Your kind are as mischievous and sinister as that mist-shrouded bog you call a forest."
I will kind of shrug and say, we get that everywhere. I'm sure you get certain things said about you as well.
He he almost seems to raise an eyebrow and says, "Yes, well, unlike Elgi, unlike any proper dwarf, the things said about Elgi tend to be either under-exaggerated or just frankly true. In any event, the circumstantial evidence maybe suggests that you may be a threat to this area, but I don't believe you're involved. Everything about you is not fitting."
Me, a threat. Maybe to the pigment that I scorched. But to anyone else, not really.
He sort of scowls and says, "Not that I'd believe anything that comes out of the twisted, backstabbing mouth of an Elgi. However, you lack any taint associated with the rising concerns around here."
Yes, I've heard of quite many rising concerns. Um, stuff coming down the mountain, and the dead are walking, and there's cannibals or something around here, and this place, it sounds like the Hager Crepes.
Uh,
So I guess I'm starting to get used to it.
he shrugs and says, "The Hager Cribs are old mountains, very old. My people were not particularly successful with mining there due to occurrences. There's a foulness about that place. It's not right and proper stone. The mountains there are wrong."
Can you explain to me what makes them wrong? I apologize that I do not understand one rock from another, but you are the expert.
Uh, he he shakes his head, seemingly more. You're not sure if it's an annoyance or in some form of disapproval. But he says, "It it wouldn't be right for me to share my understandings or my people's understandings with that of an elf. But what I will say is that there are strange coincidences with your timing and the timing of things as they've been occurring around here. Now, while I can clearly see that your stain does not match that of what's been causing all of the fuss around here, there are a number of investigating individuals who I do not think are quite so discerning."
So you do not believe me one of those fae that is drinking blood?
He scoffs and says, "Although I can't say it would surprise me entirely to learn of algae eating children, I can say for certain that you are the wrong type."
Well, at least that's off my shoulders.
He shrugs and says, "Granted, that won't protect you from the manlings. Not that I'd particularly care either way if they decided to do away with you. The fact that men tolerate elves in their lands is beyond me, but I'm simply a guest here."
Could I ask a query of you, sir?
He does not respond, but doesn't. He just sort of waits.
Do you know the Hager Crypts at all? Like, have you been up there before?
He frowns and says, "I know things about those peaks, records, the Dawi have kept for centuries, millennia even. I believe there are some clans up there right now against all sage advice."
Yes, they seem to be building something, some sort of machine.
He scowls and says, "Newfangled contraptions, more like. Ungi nonsense, bunch of wazuks."
What could be up there that is so valuable that they would not take the sage advice of one of their prized elders?
He sort of,
Or do I even want to know?
he raises an eyebrow at you and says, uh, "For an elf of that accursed wood, I would thought you would have figured that out already."
I shake my head. I am not of that cursed wood. I am of, I guess, my own cursed wood.
He frowns at this declaration, but turns and sort of looks idly towards one of the candles that is still lit in the evening, and he says, "There are notable materials buried beneath those mountains. There are some human mines in the southern parts of the peaks that do extremely well for themselves. However, I suspect my kin up near Hagerdorf, I believe is that town, if they must call it that,
Village.
he
Ramshackle huts.
uh, he doesn't disagree with you, and then says, "However, I believe it has something to do with that accursed wizard that the kin of Braun Oak Splitter have so ill-advisedly allied themselves with. Oaths or not, fools."
These kin of yours, are they actual kin?
He raises an eyebrow and say, "They're from a neighboring hold, so I know them well, as I know all the Dawi of this area well."
So it is possibly in your best interests and theirs, or in their best interests if you have certain knowledge. I will kind of tap my chin and say, these records of yours, I know that I could never lay a finger on those. But we seem to have stumbled across something. Well, maybe not stumbled. We actually sought it out. And that is one of the reasons that we are here in Jettenberg, is to continue the inquiry, gather supplies, so forth.
He gets kind of quiet and frowns at you and says, "You should be very careful about what you mess with in those peaks, elf."
I didn't mess with anything. I studied a bit. But that didn't really give me a whole lot of information.
He scowls and says, "Save me your twisted backtalk nonsense, elfling."
Basically, Master Dwarf. We've stumbled across something, a shrine to some, I will say, I'll look around. I guess this is a holy place, yes?
He scoffs at the suggestion and says,
Well,
in the loosest of terms, I suppose.
To some sort of Rogenbach, some lost god.
He pauses for a time and says, "If you want to delve into things that are best left undisturbed, then perhaps you would find Braun better company than I would hope."
I don't think Braun would even talk to me.
"Then perhaps he's not as foolish as I've begun to believe."
But such an entity, how would he be considered, like, harmful to your kin up there?
He... Roll a gossip check.
I don't have it trained.
Neither do I.
So, blah.
His jaw sets pretty tight for a good couple minutes, and then he simply shakes his head and says, "I've learned what I need to learn. I no longer require your presence here, and quite frankly, it's starting to smell."
I will nod and say, hopefully what I've said will make you think about said kin. Because perhaps this darkness that everyone seems to suddenly be coming up with, it seems to be spreading. Perhaps something terrible has happened up there already. I won't know until I get back to it. So maybe you would be able to aid my comrades. Maybe not me. You don't want to talk to me.
He frowns at you and says, "Anything that falls upon Braun Oak Splitter's head and his kin is entirely his fault. He accepted that when he decided to go up on this mad mission of his against my advice and the advice of every other elder."
I will shrug and I'll stand up and my half bow and turn to leave and just start whistling as I leave.
All right. As you are leaving, he will say, I will say this. I can't attest to any darkness rising. Sounds like mad superstitious nonsense from the manlings. But
Yes, indeed.
He says, but I can say that there is a Ungi wizard roaming about. One who does not seem particularly well versed in any certain style. His magic is very destructive.
And if he were to end up meeting me, how do you think I would fare? Just a query.
He shrugs and says, based on the reports, the variances are rather extreme. I would never bet on a human wizard over an elven one, though hopefully he'll be dealt with sooner rather than later.
I will shrug again and continue whistling as I let myself out.
All right, you head out into the night.
Okay, I will head back to the tavern.
Okay, real quick, I need to roll. Oof, gosh, of course. All right, so the night passes without any incident. Vertstat, you wake up with a significant hangover during the night, but are able to get some water and other little things to kind of help you recover. Thankfully for you, you enter your hangover pretty early in the evening. And let me check how long it takes to wear off. Roll another consume alcohol check.
Sure.
Ooh, lovely. So you have a fatigued condition that lasts for I'm gonna go ahead and round you down to 5 hours.
Okay.
Just because I think going over that would be a little excessive. And but you have another fatigue condition mysteriously upon waking up.
God damn it.
All right. It's the next day. It's day 2. Y'all meet down for breakfast.
What a bright day it is for breakfast.
It'll cost 2 brass for breakfast unless you want to eat it somewhere else.
I'll eat here for convenience.
I'll be up early and I'll eat.
I'll come down and request my money back from Verve, and we'll pay for breakfast. My breakfast.
All right. Does anybody want to go shopping for anything in particular? Do remember you do need to pick up a horse at some point.
One, I'll look at Verstadt and say, how does he look? Besides, like, disheveled vagabond.
Verstadt looks like he looks like a noticeably pale, disheveled vagabond.
You're feeling all right, Verstadt. That drink get the better of you.
Just a little bit. You know, I'm feeling better, but yeah, just tiny bit.
So what can I basically want to look him over, Sotek.
Okay.
And just is he sweating anything? Like,
are you wanting to give him like a thorough examination?
Maybe not like super up close, but
I need to know precisely what
yeah,
you're looking for.
I want to know if he's giving if he has any sort of sick cues.
Okay.
If he has any other symptoms besides looking pale,
okay.
like
First
death.
of all, Vertstat, will you allow her to proceed with this? It will be very obvious.
I was actually gonna say, you know, these last it's been about a week that I've been fatigued, right?
Yes.
Sotek? Okay. So, yeah, I'll say, so around, man, it must have started a week ago. I've been waking up just feeling not normally tired. You know, sometimes you wake up, you feel tired, but this is a little bit extra. I, I've been wondering what's wrong with me. I thought maybe that encounter with the beastmen and the goblins, but I'm not sure.
Have you considered seeing a doctor? We are in a big town.
A doctor? That would cost a lot of money, I think.
I look at his pouch of 10 gold crowns.
Verve, is that with your perception bonus for sight?
No.
Okay, so you have acute sense of sight, right?
Yeah.
So that's plus 10 or 20.
It's 1 success level when you succeed.
Oh, okay, it's 1 additional success level. Okay.
And imperceptible things.
So, this is important, which is why I'm going to say what I'm about to say, is that I need Verve to tell me precisely what she's going to do to examine, and I need Vertstat to okay anything that Verve wants to do. And if those two conditions are not met, then the information may or may not change.
So basically, I will stand up and I will kind of peer like closely at your eyes, at your skin, see if you're sweating, and kind of walk around you, see if you're shaking or anything of that sort, anything that I can kind of deduce that's not part of the hangover.
I'll sort of T-pose and be like, close my eyes and say, you seeing anything?
I will say, Aztec, you do, based on how long this has been going for now, you do have, your tongue feels sore. Your legs tend to feel tingly a fair amount of time, and you feel that your hands and feet are very cold.
All right, hold on 1 second.
If I put a hand, like, to his forehead, is he hot?
He does not appear to have a fever. And he is not overtly sweating.
So can
open up your mouth.
Can you repeat that real quick? So swollen tongue,
you've got like tingling sensation in your legs, and you've got cold hands and feet.
So open up your mouth first, Dad. Not that I want to smell your breath.
His tongue does look a little swollen, and he's kind of almost a little pale.
Verve, do you ever feel like your tongue is just a little too big for your mouth? That's how I've been feeling the past week. It's not great.
Wrist, can you find us a doctor?
Probably.
Not one of the quack doctors.
What? Not a barber surgeon? They're great.
Doctor.
Him and his mates can sing as the hack work gets done.
That is not
it's
what
good entertainment.
I don't want any hacking.
All right, Riss, do you want to go gossip for a doctor?
Yep, I'll go gossip for a doctor.
Do it. Ooh, very nice. Crit doesn't matter, but you still succeed. All right, asking around town, you do rather quickly find out about a residential doctor who's known for treating. He's willing to take in walk-ins, though you do have to pay up front.
Did they say how much up front?
Rumor has it that it is possible to haggle with him because he's a little bit of a softie, but generally he tends to charge. 1 sec. There's a chart for this.
There is a chart for this.
He tends to charge about 6 shillings for a visit.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine. I will go back and give Verve and Vergestat the good news. So I found a doctor, and he's well within your price range. And he takes walk-ins, which is great.
Vergestat will groan, but be like, all right.
Are you all going to go to the doctor?
Oh, yeah, this is great entertainment.
All right,
going to the doctor.
I will say we will go nowhere else first.
All right. Y'all drag Vertstat somewhat unwillingly, especially because of his hangover, to the doctor, and it takes you about an hour to get it figured out because it's kind of near more of the northern outskirts of town. But you eventually do find it, and you head up into his little small 2-story building, which seems to function as like the first floor is an office and the second floor is his home. But as you walk in, he is sitting at a desk, and he looks like a very well manicured, very well dressed, higher class individual. And he looks up and says, "Whoa, what's all this then?"
Yeah, good morning, Herr Doctor. This is Vertstat. Vertstat Doctor. I will look to Vertstat and wait for him to talk.
His eyes kind of drift towards you, Vertstat, and he goes, "Ah, I'm Dr. Rupert, and it seems that you don't look well, young man."
Apparently I'm not well, Dr. Rupert. For the past week, I mean, it's really culminating in this today or yesterday, but I have a very swollen tongue. When I try to walk, I have the needles up my legs. My hands and my feet, they're clammy and cold. What's wrong with me, Doc?
He raises an eyebrow, and he just kind of manhandles your head, tilting it one way or another. He looks at your eyes, and then he sort of looks around and he says, exactly what have you been doing over the last week, sir?
Call me Vertstat.
Vertstat. What activities have you been partaking in?
I will kind of cough low and say, he has been in the vicinity of the Hako crypts.
He goes, and he sort of leans back and he says, have you been bitten by any beastmen, perhaps?
We did have an encounter with them, and I believe I was shot with an arrow. Something to that effect.
He nods and says, let me see the wound then.
I will show him the wound.
Alright, he looks at it and he pokes and prods it a little, almost too roughly. But seems to lean back and says, I don't see any sign of infection. Have you eaten or drinking anything particularly unusual? Have you traveled through any swamps, perhaps?
I will shake my head to every question from behind.
He will...
Oh, you did drink that herbal concoction, didn't you?
What herbal concoction?
Oh, in Hagerdorf.
You drank an herbal concoction?
The scantily clad lady gave it you all.
Yeah.
The doctor is heavily frowning at this point.
No, that was just a one-time thing. One of the cultural leaders made an herbal tea.
He sort of frowns and says, like a priest?
Oh, I guess you could call him that. But, just one of the community leaders out there in the Hager Cribs.
It was a priestess of Raya.
Jesus.
He kind of like gives a, okay. Look, and then he turns and frowns and he says, "You're sure?"
Yes, I didn't want to be upfront about it, but yes.
He points to a screen that he is on, the only other one on the side that could see into it, and it says, "All right, strip."
Is that necessary?
I will lay out 6 coins and say, Wrist, you want to perhaps leave? Maybe he needs his privacy?
There is a privacy
Isn't that
sheet
what the screen's for?
between y'all and him, yeah. He gives you a very frank look, Vertstat, and he says, I'm already taking your money. If you don't want to, and I can't diagnose you properly, that's fine. But I'm not going to. But if the moment you leave, if you need to come back in, it's going to be another 6.
I just paid Vertstat.
I'm getting my money's worth, and I start taking off my clothes.
I mean, my money's worth.
On the other side of the barrier.
He starts. We'll assume he's behind the barrier. He starts looking you over, and then he pauses just after you've removed pretty much everything except for your lowest layer shirt and your undergarments. And he says, that's enough. I think I see the issue, young man." And he very roughly grabs your shoulders to face you away from him, and he grabs your neck and starts bending it certain ways. He goes, yep, I see the problem here. You've been spending too much time sleeping out in the woods, haven't you, young man?
I suppose. Are you telling me that's the problem of this?
He goes, "No, but put your clothes back on. I'll need to show your companion so that they can make sure that you're going to be properly taken care of. I'll have to prescribe you some medicines to pick up from the apothecary."
I will sigh.
Very well.
I will perk up Jetton.
After he nods, says, "Yes, Jetton's is fine." And he motions for Vertstat to sit down. It says, "Come over here. I assume you two are responsible for this man. Let me show you the issue here."
Well, I wouldn't take responsibility for him. He's his own man, but I'll look after him.
He grabs Vertstat's neck, and you see him kind of spread his hand to apply a lot of taut pressure. And you notice that when the skin whites out, there are two notable bumps that look not great. And he says, "You see, sometimes when humans sleep out in the woods or in open spaces, especially in particularly wild environments like the Hager Cribs, there are certain species of creatures, particularly bats, that like to feast on whatever animal they can get a hold of. It's not deadly, of course, but it can cause infections and insanguination, or a loss of blood. And that seems, I believe your friend here is suffering from anemia. You have been providing a hearty snack to something, my friend."
Like for how long?
Out of character. No fucking way.
He sits back and writes down a prescription, and he hands it to you, Wrist, and says, "You seem to know Jens. Take him there immediately. This young man needs to rest, eat a lot of food, keep light on exercise, until he's recovered, and no more sleeping outside."
For how long?
He shrugs and says, "How long have you been wherever? How long did this start?
He said a week ago.
And where were you a week ago?
Hagerdorf.
Are you going back to Hagerdorf?
Eventually.
Then never again. As long as you're in this Hagerdorf, you need to be sleeping inside."
Understood.
He nods and rolls his eyes and says,
So just to clarify, Doctor, something has been feeding on him often?
He
or just
looks,
once?
He looks at you and says, "Based on the way he looks, I'd say practically every night at least. This man's been bitten at least 5 or 6 times, looking at his neck."
Question. Do some of those bites look like it might have happened, say, last night?
He goes, "Oh, certainly. That most recent bumps there, that's because the body is having a reaction to whatever it is that bit him. I'm pretty impressed there's no infection, though."
Verstat will blanch.
Last
And
night.
Are you bringing vermin into your room?
Not that I recall.
He laughs and says, "Oh no, my dear halfling, I can assure you it must be one of the native bats, based on the way of the wound. Rats' teeth are much too close together."
But he was in a bedroom in an inn last night.
He pauses and says, "Which inn?"
The
Harpy.
Harpy's Talon?
He nods and says, "Well, it's an old place, and there's a reason. It's not particularly expensive. I wouldn't be surprised if they had rodents hanging out in their rafters, or maybe the window was open, perhaps."
Of course. That makes sense.
He points to you, Vertstat, and he says, "You need to take better care of yourself, young man. Based on the way you look, I'd say in another 2 or 3 days you would be in critical condition."
I understand.
And
Next.
he leads you all to the door and says, if that's all, then have a nice day."
Thank
Is
you.
there a way of
Herr
warding
Doctor.
off these creatures?
He scowls at you and he says, "I'm a doctor, not some kind of hooligan that lives out in the woods studying wild beasts."
Oh, you wouldn't know what happened of those slovenly sort, would ya?
He pauses and says, I suppose you could go hit up the local hunters. There's a lodge of the idiots that you can find just outside of the town. You could see it from one of the western gates.
Ah, thank you very much, Doctor.
He nods and says, and make sure he takes the medicine and rests. It's very important he doesn't overexert himself physically.
Yeah, that means no fighting in bars.
Damn it.
And with that, he shuts the door, and we'll call it there for tonight.
Cool.
All right.
With that fun bomb drop.
That was quite the bomb.
All right,
Okay.
thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.